So today's presentation, like I said, we're going to try and make it as interactive as we can. Every time you ask good questions, my colleagues who are in the room will be giving out some free t-shirts if you didn't get one. If you didn't hear before, take a smaller size. Whatever size you'd normally take, 6 smaller, this is American size. This is a large, so I highly recommend that you take something small. Now, when we start talking about the kind of blurring lines between all of these different breaches that we're seeing all the time, and I have to admit, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and so for the last 4 years, I've been trying to explain to her what I do. And that's been the hardest conversation. How do you explain that you're a cyber defender to a young girl? So I just kind of put on shirts like this, and I go, da, da, da. We're cyber defenders. We fight against hackers. But you know, when we start thinking about this blurring line between the breaches that are happening, you know, we have to think as a group, as an organization, as a, an industry, that we kind of need to change our approach. Because the reality is we've kind of done this, kind of castle and moat type of, tiered of defense for quite some time, and saying, hey, this is what's traditionally worked for us 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. It's no longer working, right? And so when you think about it, for the last 20-odd years, I've worked for different vendors, but the last 10 of that was specifically working for the firewall guys. So NetScreen, Juniper, Cisco, Palo Alto Networks. And so we saw that there was a big emphasis on next generation and getting ourselves having a different level of context. Because in security, let's start with the first question. What do you guys do in your firewall when you don't know what's going on? What's your policy around I don't know, I don't know? Run, deny, or I don't know. Not sure what I'm going to do, right? And so that's one of the first tough things to do. So we add context. I said, okay, well, the context a long time ago was about IP addresses, was maybe about ports and protocols. And then we said, let's add more context and let's add the user. And said, so instead of this port and protocol, we're going to move down to application. And so user plus application gives us great context. But we start thinking about known user, known application. How many exploits are happening with known user, known application? And that context is just not enough anymore. And so the evolution of what we have to do is we have to take it to another different level. And so just quickly, we're drawing out, what have we been doing? When we see an attacker, we look at the how, port, protocol, application, user. But how often do we stop and ask the question, why? How many people have a policy here that when someone gets bricked or gets a ransomware, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get your executive saying, let's just re-image the machine, right? When you re-image a machine, what are you doing? Any kind of data, any kinds of forensics, any kinds of everything just gets kinds of wiped out, and you kind of move on, and you get the user back up and running as fast as possible. But think about that. Who's the user? Do you ask what the user does when you go and re-image his machine? Do you, sometimes you know them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes we're in big organizations, and you just really don't know who people are. And so we're going to talk a little bit about attribution. We're going to talk a little bit about, why was this user targeted? And then we'll start talking about who targeted them, and what were they trying to gain. All right. Technical guy trying to work out the clicker. Works well. So today's threat outlook is definitely blurry. The reality is this. As a security organization, we are faced with more types of attacks, a larger landscape. Now, all of a sudden, every user wants to be able to use their tablet, their phone, SaaS applications. Sometimes we're trying to get to developers that want infrastructure as a service because they want to bring up these servers as fast as possible to be able to deliver on it. We want to be agile, right? But as we increase the footprint, did we increase the IT staff or the security staff that went with it? Most of the time, no. And so what the reality is that we have a bigger challenge to try and be able to do, and the attack vector has gotten so much more blurry than it ever has. Okay, so now you can see what the shirt is. It's about different types of actors. And so what we're going to talk a little bit about is the different types of adversaries. When you go and wipe out a machine, do you know if it was random? Do you know if it was targeted? Do you know if it was just a hacktivist that just wants to, kind of slap up something on your website, or has a gripe against what you're trying to do? Or was it a very specific targeted attack by a group that maybe is a battalion that all they do is target intellectual property? They don't really care about $300 worth of Bitcoins. They want to steal the future ideas of our brightest minds, right? As the globalization has come around, one of the biggest things that's happening is people are trying to get that next patent. We see about fights for patents all the time. You know that you created it, yet all of a sudden someone is publishing a document on your patent that you're about to put out. How did that happen? I wonder. Different types of attacks. I was down in northern New Brunswick not too long ago doing kind of a conversation. And anyone speak French in the room? Yes, yes. How many of you speak Braillon? Acadian French. And so one of the jokes that were there was, nous, en Edmundston, on est tellement petit qu'il n'y a personne qui va nous attaquer. And he's saying, I'm from a small little city. He says, and you know what? No one's ever going to attack me because we're so freaking small. That's not going to go there. And I said, oh, okay, so I guess you're not connected to the internet. Why? Of course I am. I says, oh, okay. So you mean you would be the exception that when you connect the device into the internet that you're not port scanned within 12 seconds, right? Je sais pas. All right, good. So let's have a little conversation about that. Because geographical boundaries are absolutely wiped out. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be targeted. So one of the things that we're going to try and identify is when you got hit, okay? If we don't instantaneously re-image this, we could start looking at some things like a TTP. How many of you knows what TTP is? It's that acronym soup. A bunch of you do, a bunch of you don't, okay? Tactics, tools, procedures, right? So how do we identify different types of hacking groups? How do we attribute who the individuals or which group they are? Through their tactics, through the tools and their procedures. They will often use same scripts. They'll often download or use the same downloaders. They will often do certain things that will help us to identify. And what we want to identify is their motivation, right? Are they a criminal? Are they an activist? Both of them have concerns. Both of them will have different motivations behind it. If you're being attacked by a criminal group, are they thinking about ransom? Are they trying to get additional revenue? It's 100% a revenue-based. Versus a hacktivist is more about managing ego and trying to say, what can we do to make them look bad, right? And then as we move forward, you'll have stuff like nation-state attackers, right? How many of you used Amazon, by the way? Amazon? Amazon. I'm thinking those that didn't put their hands up are probably liars. And I'm thinking about my wife. Not very technical. God bless her. She is phenomenally operationally. She's the most effective person I know. But when it comes to Amazon, she's a genius. She can order anything. So I'm thinking maybe we should consider getting that. Oh, yeah, really? So what kind? Maybe like this? Yeah, okay. I ordered it. Jesus, man. We're still talking about it. And it's that simple, it's that fast, and it's that easy. That is the context that we are in now when it comes to how easy it is to create malware. Okay? So this tool is the kind of the graphical, kind of prettier version of Amazon Crime. I can tell you, if my system engineer was in the room right now, and he's not, but he would talk about we went through a live example in one of the trainings that we were. Okay? And it is absolutely scary because they'll start with saying, hey, let's pick this exploit. Let's pick this vulnerability. And then they start asking you additional questions. And it's like, so are you going to compile this yourself? No, can you do it? Sure. And how are you going to deliver this? I don't know. It says, why don't we rent you out 10,000 zombies for a few hours? Oh, really? Okay. And then what about command and control? What about the delivery mechanisms? And it's literally you're just selecting your boxes. Kind of like, what's your quantity and what's your delivery method, right? And then they compile everything together. They give you how many samples you want. So if you want 50 different variations of it, they generate it for you. And then while you're on this page, okay, the little customer service thing pops up. Hey, can we help you? It's mind-boggling at the speed of how these attackers can generate new types of malware on the fly dynamically. This is the worst version of 20 years ago. We used to call them script kiddies. This is the worst because you don't even have to do delivery. You don't even have to do command and control. You don't have to try and pop up a site. They take care of it all for you. Right? And then at the end, they're going to say, OK, well, it's going to cost you a fraction of a Bitcoin. This is what it is. And then you do everything for you. And then 2 days later, that command and control center, that malware, the domain, it's all gone. It's all completely gone. And so traditional signature-based approaches can't keep up with this anymore. We know that the traditional way is not going to be able to keep up with that the way it is. 1-10-60 rule. Not sure if you guys heard this, but the statistics have shown us that you have 1 hour and 58 minutes before they're going to move lateral, right? And so when you think about a user that moves lateral, he's now came in as Mr. Hacker, took over a device, maybe downloaded something, launched a script, launched an exploit, got access, got privileged access. Within 2 hours, he's going to laterally move and will no longer have the traces of who he was and where he was. And so if you just wiped out that machine that got compromised, he's already still in your network. He's now moved laterally and is going around. So as we start talking about the 1-10-60 is, can we find something within 1 minute? Can we take action within 10 minutes, triage, and within 60 minutes, can we actually remediate? Right? Can we contain this? Can we remediate? Can we understand what's going on? Can we go deeper into what's happening? That is the speed that cyber defenders need to be able to react to. And so as we start thinking about the complex hierarchies of, I'm an endpoint guy, I'm a Windows guy, I'm a Linux guy, I'm a Mac guy, I'm a server guy, I'm an endpoint guy, I am a enterprise architect, solutions architect. These ransomware and malicious guys, they don't have to deal with any of that. They don't care about any of your corporate hierarchy or your structure. And so we need to look at our internal governance. We need to look at our structures and say, how can we be nimble enough so from the first moment we know something's happening in less than 2 hours, we have to contain, we have to resolve, and we have to remediate. How do we do that across complex corporate structures? Right? Any questions here so far, guys? You guys have all been pretty quiet, and I know John's ready to throw a bunch of shirts out, so we got any questions here so far? No, we're good? So, time to detect, 1 minute. Time to investigate, 10 minutes. Time to remediate and contain, 60. That is some of the internal metrics that we use as well on how to be able to try and make sure that we can identify, triage, and remediate in a very short period of time. We cheat, we use the cloud, so we don't have very much structures, but okay, I'm actually getting this a little quicker. Thank you. Defense in depth. The reality is this. Okay, when we think about the multitude of different layers that we've built up, right? If you think that the hacker is actually targeting coming after you, and he's got the time, he's got the money, he's got the resources, right? So I know many of you work for the Canadian federal government. If there is a nation state that was trying to come after us, they got the time and the resources. When you're talking about complete battalions that are dedicated just to doing these type of attacks. So, okay, I got a router, got a firewall, it's next generation, I have an IPS, I have some URL filtering, I got some web gateways, I have some email gateways, I have another set of firewalls, another set of routers, I have some access control. Let me ask you a question. Out of all those different, 8 or 9 different layers, is there any single one of those that's 100% foolproof? I would be very hard-pressed as a vendor to ever tell you that there's a silver bullet for any technology. Now, if you think about that, our adversaries have the time, the effort, the energy, the money. They just need to find the crack in each one of these and kind of move around, right? I get past the router, get past the firewall. From the firewall, I could get past the gateway, the mail gateway, and keep on moving through if I have enough time, right? And I have enough money. So defense in depth definitely has some challenges. Now what we have to try and do is be able to look at in breadth. How many people here manage firewalls? Firewalls, guys? Manage? There's 1, 2, 3. There's got to be more than that. You guys are all getting kind of shy on me here. When you start thinking about managing firewalls, how many people actually go and manage certificates on the end so that they do man-in-the-middle attack? Right? When I was in the firewall world, that was probably about 12 to 15% of customers were doing man-in-the-middle so that they can do a full inspection into an encrypted tunnel. Right? What happens when you're not doing that inspection into an encrypted tunnel? How much of your traffic is encrypted? After running about reports at about 100 or so customers, 100, 150 customers when I used to be at Palo Alto Networks, I can tell you that the average is probably between 45 to 55% of traffic is encrypted, and that's increasing probably by about 3 to 5% every single year. So we're now in the 50 to 60% of traffic is encrypted. Yet only 12% of the customers are inspecting that encrypted traffic. What does that mean? Your front layers are just seeing goobly gob. Can't see anything, can't do anything with it because it's encrypted. What do you do with port 443 or encrypted tunnel? You let it go through. And so we need to kind of think that if all of our network layers of tools are not necessarily inspecting 100% of that traffic, then we have to have a kind of a final level of defense that's going to have a much deeper level of breadth. We need to be able to take action. We need to be able to make decisions. We need to understand what's going on with 100% of the traffic. Because the reality is this. You're tasked with securing 100% of the infrastructure. You're tasked with 100% of the intellectual property. Yet, if your only tool to be able to do it only sees 40% of this traffic, then I'd be feeling pretty uncomfortable with that conversation right now. So we need to look at the unencrypted packet. We need to look at the unencrypted and be able to have full context. That's where we can start making decisions. So I'm not telling you, by the way, and please, and I know this is probably going to go up online afterwards, I'm not saying that you don't need firewalls. And I'm not saying that you don't need to have network-based tools. You absolutely do. Because if we can make a decision and take an action in nanoseconds and milliseconds up down the stream, you don't want to leave all your decisions to end up at the last line of defense, right? Which is going to be at your endpoint of your service. But you need to be able to harden the hell out of every single approach that comes through there. So I love this slide. That's actually our car. So we had an Audi R8, and so is it a GTR now, right? He has a couple. Yeah, he's got a couple. So our CEO is also a professional racer and is on the track. So that's actually our CrowdStrike car. So we start talking about breadth of platform. One of the things that we hear is that there is agent fatigue. People say, I want to throw something else on my machine. We know most of you guys are, anyone in here, or how many of you here are in IS? Or are you mostly IT? Developers? Developers? No, good. You're a developer. Okay. Because one of the most common things that we hear is when you have to compile. You have to do a big compilation, and you're going to have to run it multiple times. Then the 6 or 7 or 8 different agents running on the machine is just going to slow the hell out of you're trying to put everything together, and it's painful. So we're hearing that there's fatigue at that level, even though we know we have to strengthen that level. That is the last line of defense. There's 100% of the traffic, 100% of what's going to go is going to happen at that level, yet there's a bit of fatigue on putting more stuff on there. So when we have to put stuff on there, we need to consider the fact that we need to reduce our resources. And then how many of you here are hearing continuously about cybersecurity and artificial intelligence? I want to see how many of you guys are awake. All right, good. So most of you guys are awake. That's not too bad. All right. So artificial intelligence is based on models, right? And so, if you think about how, Big Blue beat Gary Kaspersky in chess, well, the first time you would have tried it, he would have got crushed because Big Blue would have had 1,000 models. But then when you start putting 1 million models, and you start putting 10 million models, and you put 100 million models, it starts being able to calculate all the different variations. And so when you want to start talking about machine learning, you want to talk about behavior analysis, data becomes critical. Okay? So as an organization, we were always 100% cloud-centric. We just hit another milestone just recently that we do more than a trillion events a week. Now, a bunch of you guys probably manage SIMs, so you know that a single event could have 1,000 or multiple thousands of artifacts that makes a single event. So think of thousands of trillions of different artifacts that we're consuming. That's what we're doing every single week. And so we were at a conference recently, and one of the senior executives of Amazon, who was part of who we use, told us something that kind of blew us away. Do we have a lot of people here use Twitter? You guys use Twitter? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I'm kind of so-and-so. The younger guys are all saying, yeah, you know, some of us are saying, yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't really want to know that you're going to the bathroom. That's too much information. But Amazon told us that by 12 o'clock every single day, we consume more data than Twitter does and WeChat does in a whole year. Now you think about that from a cybersecurity perspective, and you think about massive graph data model, right? Every single tweet in the world for a whole year, we're consuming that. By the time this presentation is going to be over, we consumed more than all the Twitter and WeChat did in a whole year. So that is the model that we are bringing over to our artificial intelligence agent. One single architecture. I don't know about you guys, but 20 years later, trying to help customers get projects moving across the line, you guys have to go through some of the most painful processes. I have to admit, I do feel bad. But we start doing change management review, enterprise architecture, solutions architecture reviews, risk reviews, and then we won't talk about the whole procurement side because that's just another complete step. But by the time a project comes through, you've probably been working at this anywhere from 6 to 18 months to finally say, I want this, and I got all the stakeholders to agree. I find it interesting being a SaaS vendor or being a vendor that kind of does everything on the cloud, because for us, once our agent is deployed, you just turn on the license in the cloud, and that's it. So I always have fun. There was a customer of ours that just purchased 75,000 endpoints, and we said, yeah, I want to try this out. I said, oh, OK, cool. Should we do an enterprise architecture review? He says, well, yeah, sure. You connected to the internet? Yes, good, we're done. And that was it. The conversation was over. All we needed to do was just turn on the license key to enable it in the cloud, and that was it. Right? When you think about agility, when you think about how fast those attackers are going, and we're spending 18 months to kind of prove an idea that we should be going down this direction, they've probably came out with about, 200 different types of attacks in that time? So an integrated architecture allows you the flexibility, allows you the agility, allows you the speed to be able to adjust to dynamic environments of new type of attacks, because you cannot predict what you don't know. But as you do know, from the moment you do know, is 2 years, by the time you go through full procurement cycle, sufficient to be able to address it? That type of attack is probably not that relevant anymore. So breadth of platform combined with breadth of protection is a defense in breadth. As an organization, we've protected millions and millions of customer endpoints. One of the things that our claim to fame is that our organization doesn't have a mission statement. We have a mission, and the mission is to be able to help you stop breaches. So far, everyone who's used our product, we have not had a material breach to date. Young company, 7 years old, but we've done a phenomenally good job at making sure to stay ahead and staying very cutting edge to what you need to do to be able to stay abreast to an attacker that is very agile, that's very fast. So, last thing. When we start talking about attribution, okay? So let's get back to that subject for a second. I'm going to run through a use case if you guys are okay with that. User gets hacked. Policy says that I just go and re-image the machine and get it back up as fast as possible. That's scenario one, traditional approach. Second approach would be, okay, hold on a second. Let me stop for a second. And we'll do the first, and if you take anything from this, by the way, the next time you go to re-image a computer, if you're part of that team that does it, just ask one question. what do you do for us? I know it might sound really, really simple, but so your name is Frank? Frank, and what do you do? Oh, I'm the chief architect here. Oh? Yeah, I'm kind of working on a project that's going to change and evolve our company. So just think for half a second, should I really wipe out that machine and all the data that came with that? Maybe I shouldn't. So when you start looking at other tools or other solutions or other approaches, one of the things that I would do is I would look and say, can I build out a process map and understand how it got to this point? Can I see what steps the hacker took to get past here? Because I had a firewall, I had a web gateway, I had a mail gateway, I had an IPS, and it made it down here still. What do they do? Well, it's probably a known user with privileged access. It's probably known application that would still have passed through everything anyways, right? That would have launched a kind of script. So once we start looking at that script, we look at the approach, we could start saying, that TTP, that looks like a Chinese battalion that's dedicated to intellectual property theft. Why did they ransomware the machine? To make it look like it was some script kiddie. Make it look like it was random, so you just kind of wipe it out. They didn't have to lock the machine. They've already scraped the data they needed. Right? And do you guys know the MITRE attack, or the kill chain from MITRE attack framework? So if we cut at the 7th level, right, can we say, I now know that which battalion this is, the Chinese, I know what they're trying to do. Can I go back maybe to the 2nd step of this kill chain, which is reconnaissance? And can I look across all my organizations dynamically on the fly, right there and then, to understand, are there other machines that are currently trying to be infected? And then you say, well, we're 10,000 employees in our company. It's interesting. There's only 25 of them that had the reconnaissance. And then you could do something like an ARP table lookup, and you recognize that all 25 of them are actually connected to that guy. That one user. All 25 of them were there. Not 9,000, not 1,000, no, 25. Every single one of them was connected to that one single user. So now we start saying, okay, hold on a second. This wasn't random at all. They bricked the machine probably just to hide the fact of who they really were. They didn't need to, right? Now can you bring up a conversation up to your senior management? Now can you go up, and if you're a public or private company, well, this is something that would probably come up to the board. Well, if he was chief architect that had the next generation product where your company is going to be, that would be important. And so when you go to wipe out a machine, you're going to kind of kill out all that data. And so one of the values that we bring also, any vendors who do a cloud-based EDR, think about it. The second that changes every single step of the attack happen, it got updated into the cloud, brick the machine, lock the machine, take it out, it doesn't matter because the data is still there. I can still see the metadata of what they did. I can still understand the tracks of every single step that they did to be able to identify, even on a machine that's completely locked down, I still know every single step of what they did. Does that make sense, guys? I think that the evolution of where we need to go as a group, as an industry, as cyber defenders and the guys wearing kind of cool shirts, is we need to get the evolution of a little bit less of the how. We've been doing that how stuff for a long time, right? That port, that protocol, that application they use, we've been doing that stuff for a while now. I think the evolution of trying to get ahead of this game is we need to start asking the questions of why and then who. Once we can understand the who, the evolution starts going and saying, what's their motivations? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to get at? And it'll change your direction of where you're going to put your effort and your energy, right? How much time are we spending? I get people asking me, so Ken, why do you guys kind of do the whole crowd thing? I said, why do you spend 50% of your time in just trying to manage servers and try and do sneakernet and try and patch and try and do the updates? When I do all that in the cloud for you. And so when you have guys who are GX certified or guys who are CSCP certified, and they're doing sneakernet, is that the best usage of your resources? No. But you're probably too busy to do deep threat hunting. You're probably too busy to try and go after the forensics. So let's take all that operational time and let's refocus it. And let's refocus ourselves on threat hunting. Let's refocus ourselves on understanding the why and then the who because the tools, the resources, the conversations you have, if you have a chief risk officer, are going to be very, very different when they start realizing that you're being heavily targeted. Not only are you being heavily targeted, but you're being heavily targeted by a nation state who's got unlimited resources or near unlimited resources, right? And I say that not to scare people, but I think that we need to have the right kind of conversations with our senior management about what are they coming after, who are they coming after, and what are they trying to do. Because here, especially here in Ottawa, we're an innovation engine. There are a lot of companies that are doing very, very cool intellectual property. How valuable is that if someone is just ripping it off and putting the patent out before we can finish what we're trying to do? And that's the context of where we need to get to. So, any other questions around that, guys?